Welcome, welcome. It's been a while, but we're back. Are you back? If you're back, we're back. How about that? Very nice. Welcome, ladies. It's been a wonderful holiday season. It's been a wonderful break. If nothing else, we learned to appreciate each other. I've always appreciated you, but maybe you all need to appreciate me a little. But anyway, today's January 13th, and after the holidays, we are back. A new year. And for us as a company, as a new year, I can't think of anything I would like to see more than you all making jackets, because I think jackets somehow are a culmination, a high point in our sewing. We perceive them to be so difficult, and they're not. So we're going to have so much fun in these next two webcasts. The goal is to literally do it together. And so as I stopped sewing, where I want you all to stop sewing, it was hard. I wanted to keep going. I wanted to finish, but no, I wasn't allowed. I had to wait. Discipline. So I started sewing on some other stuff just so I could keep sewing. But welcome, welcome. It is really fun to be back tonight. And I know you're missing The Bachelor, and I know that's really tough. In fact, so some of you aren't here because you're watching The Bachelor. And I was told that The Bachelor took precedence, and I said, hey, what can I do? I don't give out roses. I can't compete. All right, so I have traditionally, just for those of you who are new, we have just a lot of new people as our email list keeps growing and growing, and so we're really appreciative of that. But what we do have is the first 15 minutes is questions or answers, and I know some of you come and you talk beforehand, and so what we've agreed to do is once the webcasts begin at 8 o'clock for all the kind of going back and forth to stop, because a lot of people are trying to read what's going on back and forth and listen. And what we talked about yesterday, I was in Irvine, California. We can't talk and listen and hear at the same time. You just can't do all that. It's not possible to do all that. So we're going to shut down the talking and just be able to listen. One of those. All right. So I'm going to start with just a couple questions just before we start in that were emailed in. And I love that you guys do this, that you'll email me questions, because it gives me a chance to kind of read them through and think them through and be able to respond. All right, the first one was about a blouse, 600, and several of our blouses actually. What they do is there's a front facing, and the front facing wraps around the blouse. So I'm kind of going to give you a little example. If this is the front of the blouse, actually I'm going to change it up. I'm going to make this the front of the blouse, and I'm going to make this the front facing, and what it does is it goes to the back. There's two fold lines on the front facing. There's one fold line that folds at the front of the blouse, and then there's a seam allowance that folds underneath. So you fold on the first line, and that's just a seam allowance, and then the second fold is at the front of the blouse, and you sew that down, and it makes a tab down the front of the blouse, and you have two lines. So that's all it is. And then you actually have three layers, because you have two facing layers and one blouse layer. So as far as interfacing goes on that garment, you can choose to interface it if you want, or you can choose to leave off the interfacing. The whole concept of this particular method is that you don't need any fusibles, that the fabric itself acts as the interfacing, and it just works tremendously. All right, then another one I got was they wanted me to show some of our notions. And the elastics we have, these are really cool elastics. They're very neat. I got them when I was in New York. There's a little silver roll. It's kind of a sparkly silver. And then this one's really cool. It's a sparkly little leopard, goldish leopard colored. So where do I see using them? Literally at the top of pants. You can just serge the top of a pant and gather it right on instead of using the band and covering the band and all that on a yoga pant. You could just make this the top of the band. You could leave it exposed, leave it showing. Both edges are finished. Also as straps, you could do it as straps. I did it, and I don't have it here, but I did it as the back of a blouse when I cut, or back of a sweater. I used 195, the sweater knit, and I cut out that whole back, and then I just layered. Michael Kors did it. He called it the ladder dress. He just layered elastic over several rows, and the elastic got shorter and shorter. You could use that as a decorative elastic on the back of a shirt. You put one strap right over your bra strap so you can still wear a bra with it, and then usually a smaller one below and a larger one above. It's a great look for the back of a sweater. Then also I've got a couple clasps. We call this our gunmetal clasp. These are probably, you can see them better online than here, but I love them. These are beautiful at the top of a little sweater set. They twist, they open, they close, they twist. This one is magnetic. I can see where you would do two or three of these, just like with buttons. So, and that just is magnetized, and it comes back in and then closes, and it just, you have room to sew this side down and sew that side down. Okay, so then the last question was on a sleeve. And actually I'm going to show that in a little bit later on anyway, so we won't worry about that. Alright, let's go to questions and answers. Thanks for your patience. For a jacket, how do you tape the lapel roll? On a jacket, lapels aren't being taped anymore. You know, when I was in college, which was in the 80s, actually they weren't even being done then. In the 70s is when jackets became popular for women. The 70s was the decade that women started wearing jackets, and if you remember when they first started wearing jackets, they really were men's jackets on women. And I remember thinking clearly, I'll never wear a jacket because they look like little men. Jackets have evolved a tremendous amount, but part of the evolution process, and even in men's too, has been that they are much, much softer. They're softer fabrics. The whole reason that taping the roll line and all that stuff took place is because fabric was crude. It didn't fold well. There's a lot of things it didn't do. And so literally, in order to get the fabric to lay correctly, it was stitched into place. It's not necessary to do that. When you have a pattern and the way the pattern is cut and the way the pattern is created, that roll will form automatically on its own. So there are no taped roll lines anymore. I mean, you can go Armani, you can go all your high-end ready-to-wear you want. The highest end there is, you can go to $5,000 for a jacket. There's no tape, no roll line. There's no pad stitching. You can look on the back. None of that exists. Okay? So you can still do it if you want to. You know, very labor intensive for something that's going to roll anyway. Do we choose the size by the fabric we are using besides the size? Am I reading that right? Do we choose the size by the fabric we are using besides the size we choose? Example, a light versus a heavier weight. Absolutely. Yeah, you know, whenever we're sewing, ladies, one thing I enjoy about sewing is there's variables. Is that fair? There are variables, and one variable is our fabric, one variable is the style, one variable is us and where we're wearing it to and where we're going. So we got to take all those variables and put them in a can and kind of shake them up, and then they're going to change. And the goal is we got to think through the process and come up with the right solution. And if in doubt, then we have, you know, plan A and plan B that we can go through, and we'll talk about that tonight when we start dealing with draping. Okay? Could I use tie facing for sleeve caps in a blouse to give it a little body? The answer is yes, you could. Would I? No. Because tie interfacing is there for easing. A blouse is softer than that. Even no matter how soft a blouse is of a set-in sleeve, it shouldn't really... I can't come up with an answer. With a good answer that makes sense. If I wanted to give it a little body, I would use fusible interfacing. I would do something that stabilized the fabric itself, not just a little portion of the cap. It just doesn't seem the appropriate answer to me. Try it, see if you like it. You can always baste it in, take it out, and then just see if it gives you the results you like it or that you wanted it to have. Okay. I'm making pants out of a light wool flannel. Since it's so lightweight, would you underline or line the pants? And if so, with what fabric? I would fuse. Now again, if you go back 30, you know, it's so funny because when I say back go 30 years, I realize 30 years was just yesterday. I have to go back farther than that. But if you go back, let's into the inception of lining pants. And why pants were lined were because the fabrics were crude and they were irritable. And so they were lined to protect the body, and also to give a little layer or cushion to the outside fabric to retard wrinkling, etc., etc. As our fabrics have become more sophisticated, then several things have happened. Number one, the fabrics are not near as harsh to us. Even wools and all those kind of things are really nice. But also we have fusible interfacing, and the whole purpose of fusible interfacing, which we didn't have 30 years ago, is to change the hand of the fabric, to manipulate it to be something different than it originally is. So it's important to understand fusible interfacing and its variables and why it's used and what it's used for, etc., etc. But the whole reason it is used is to give stability to a pant, to give it a better drape. Once you use fusible, you don't have to line. Lining is completely cosmetic, and lining doesn't change the hand of the fabric near what the fusible interfacing does. So my answer would be fusible interfacing. Absolutely, hands down. If you're not familiar with it, get familiar with it because it's fabulous. It just really is fabulous. I'm working on a long mid-calf wool coat, and the screen went blank. That must mean you're done. With a roll shawl collar, what interfacings would you recommend? Well, I don't know what the fabric feels like or looks like, and much of what you put on the inside depends on how you want the garment to look. I can tell you that sewers have a tendency to make garments too heavy and too stiff and too outdated. I think we're just not aware of how wonderfully light and thin our jackets are today. They're made out of beautiful fabrics. The fabrics are in themselves warm. The only interfacing I use is a fusible knit tricot. There's 3 reasons I use it. Number 1, to add more body. Number 2, to retard wrinkling. And number 3, to stabilize something that's loosely woven. So if you want to do any of those, I'd go to the fusible tricot. I don't use anything in anything I do anytime other than the fusible tricot knit. It's the only interfacing I use if I use anything. All right? Can you cut the elastic in skinnier strips? Yes, you can. You can cut in any widths you want. The gold here is 2 inches wide, and you can cut right down the center of it. And most of the elastics today, the way they're really made to you know, be separated, if that's a fair statement. So this stretches all by itself, and you notice nothing comes out or comes away or anything like that. All right? Any tips on changing a regular sleeve into a puffed sleeve? Not tips, but I'll tell you just how to do it. A puffed sleeve has gathers at the top, and gathers equal slashes. So if you take a regular sleeve, let me just use this here just for a minute, then generally with puffs, and again it's different if you're doing child or adult, but most adult gathers are 1.5 to 1. So let's say I want to take and just put the puff right through this little section of the sleeve. I would measure what that section is, I would slash it, and I would probably slash every inch so that, remember, slashing equals gathers, so you can't slash it in one place and then expect those gathers to be evenly distributed. If you want the gathers to be evenly distributed, you have to evenly slash. So I'm going to take this little 6-inch area, I'm going to make it to 1 to 1.5 of 6, which is equal to 9. So I'm going to slash in 1-inch intervals. I've got to go all the way to the bottom. They're called pivot points. And then I open up the top until it's until those 6 inches become 9 inches, and then just reconnect the sleeve head. I mean the top of the sleeve cap. So then I gather up just those 6 inches. I would gather back up, or those 9 inches. I would gather into 6, and then I would put the sleeve into my garment. So again, because it's pattern making and there's rules, they're pretty simple and pretty straightforward. Really not a lot of opinion there, if that helps. Okay. Samantha's jacket, which is pattern number 1912. I always get Samantha's and GA's jacket confused. Calls for two different zipper sizes, 16-inch and 24-inch. Do you have any of the longer zippers available on your website? We don't. We only have, they're really about 18-inch. We call them 16, but they're about 18-inch. When the longer zippers are the ones that start in the back and come around, they actually don't have to go all the way. If the zipper ended before it went into the side seam, that would not be a big deal. So I only used the 16-inch or the 18-inch zippers. Those are the ones I used, and they just ran out. But the impact is right here, and you get that full impact by using those. Would that elastic make a good belt? Absolutely, it makes a great belt. And that's all you have to do. I didn't even mention that, so thank you. All you'd have to do is put a belt buckle on it, and it would be a great belt as well. And you can cut it to be any size you want. So that's a great use for it. Very inexpensive belt, by the way. I think this is $4 a yard, so it's a pretty inexpensive belt. Would you zigzag that elastic to a waistband to show it as the waistband? Would you zigzag that elastic to, I'm not sure what you're asking. I would use it as a waistband. I wouldn't, it can go right against your body. You don't need to put anything over it. You don't need to cover it. Just leave it exactly as it is. Don't do anything else to it. What pattern number is the top you are wearing? It's 150. Dana's top. Yeah, 150. I just put, it's the long sleeve version, but I put on the sweater set because Dana's top has a little bit of a cap sleeve, so I just put on the sweater set armhole and then use the sweater set sleeve, 195 sleeve. So it's 150 with 195 sleeve. See, I can do that now and get away with it because y'all are getting really, really smart. I was in Irvine yesterday. I told you that. I mentioned that. The crowd is just so smart. It's so much fun because you're just getting really, really smart. And the questions just keep rising up in smartness. I know that's not a word. If making a merino wool knit dress, would you use the sheath dress or one of your knit tops patterns lengthened to dress length? It just depends on what you want. The 4200, the princess sheath dress would work great. That's a styling question. You could do any of the. You could do either option. It just depends on. Let's say you wanted a yoke. If you wanted a yoke, then you could use this and just make this long and make it into a dress. But the fabric itself would work either way. It wouldn't make any difference. It's totally your decision on what you want to do style-wise. I think we're in our 15 minutes. You guys, good questions. Good questions. Welcome back. Is it good to be back? Okay, so let's get started. So what I want to do on our sew along, I've really been wanting to do this for a while, and I can't think of a better time to do this whole jacket thing. Is that a new year? You guys can do it. You've gotten smarter and smarter and smarter. There's lots of webcasts for you to watch. I did want to mention to you that all of our PBS cassettes, you know, the show, the series, whatever that is, whatever that is, Fit to Stitch, they've all been mailed out. If you haven't gotten it, you'll get it any day, but they've all been completely mailed out. All the pre-orders, everything's done. So we're very, very excited. February is going to be kind of our launch, if you'll say. We're really going to kind of put a heads up to PBS because we really want you all to, if you will, if you feel so inclined, to call your stations. Forget who's airing it and who's bought it and who hasn't and who what. We want everyone at this point to kind of call your stations, look up who your PBS is, your area, and let them know that you know of a show called Fit to Stitch and you know, are interested in seeing it. If you feel inclined, don't do it if you don't want to. All right, so the reason I wanted to do this whole thing in January because it's a new year. 1950 is the pattern of pattern of the month. The reason I chose 1950 is literally it has 4 body pieces and 2 sleeve pieces. So there's 6 pieces to this jacket. I mean, let's face it, we have a lot of blouses that have that many pieces. So the good news is it can't get that hard. Okay. So here's my goal. My goal is to kind of, you guys do all this together. We're going to do this together. If you haven't ordered your pattern, we're current with orders. So everything that came in today goes tomorrow. I mean, we're real fresh with orders. All those who joined the Pattern of the Month Club, all of those patterns have been shipped. The initial thing, we opened that back up because there were so many of you who are vacationing for the holidays, yada, 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 who really wanted to take advantage of that and didn't get to. So I opened it up for another week or so. And it will still include this pattern of the month. It'll start January and go till December 2014. And again, we'll get those shipped ASAP. Because what I want you to do is what we've done tonight. Hopefully, my goal is to challenge you guys to get everything I've gotten done for tonight for next time. And then next time, I'll finish up the jacket, and then you can do that before the next webcast. And then I'm hoping we all post all this stuff on Facebook so everybody can see what everybody else is doing. Okay, so 1950. This is a shawl collar jacket. So a shawl collar doesn't have a collar. So that's one reason I did it, because you just don't you have less pieces to deal with. A shawl collar is very easy to sew. It's a wonderful jacket. Also, in all my travelings and all my fittings and yada yada, it fits just extremely well. We're going to do that tonight. We're going to make a muslin. We're going to drape the muslin. We're going to cut out the fabric. We're going to talk about fabrics, and we're going to put the shell together. And so that's everything I've done tonight. We're going to do those 4 steps. We're going to make the muslin, drape the muslin, cut out the jacket, talk about fabrics, and then of course make the base. And that's all you're going to do before next time. You're not going to do any more. It's really hard to stop, especially when it's really, you're having fun and it's really going along well. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is choosing the size. And I can't say this enough. I've said it over and over, and y'all just don't listen. That's okay. But if you don't listen, it causes you a lot more work. And so measure carefully. Number one, you should be measuring a jacket you like. If you have no jacket you like, measure your bust and add a couple inches. But I'm saying to you, you're going to save yourself a lot of headache if you measure the size of a jacket you wear. And where do you measure it? You're going to measure it right through the widest part of the bust. So you can take it right under the underarms and just measure right through there. If you're going to measure to do a woven fabric, don't measure a knit jacket. If you're going to measure a knit jacket, don't measure a woven jacket. If you need to go shopping, go shopping. You've got 2 weeks to get this homework assignment done. So if you need to spend a little bit of time shopping to gather data, sometimes that time is really well spent because it'll save you time behind the sewing machine. Okay, so in this particular case, the W size, just in case you guys don't know, it's meant for a smaller body with more weight gain, a smaller boned woman with more weight gain. The principles we're going to talk about in fitting are the exact same for men as they are for women. So the principles of muslin fitting are the same. The principles of jacket construction are the same for men as they are for women. So for you guys watching, you can do it along too. For you men watching, you can do it along too. Okay, so I'm going to go to the back, and because it's a jacket and because it involves my bust, I'm only going to pay attention to my bust in choosing the muslin size to make. Measure the jacket, pick out the size you like, and make up that muslin size. If, for instance, I'm going to go on the back, and again, it's pattern number 1950, let's just say I'm a 46, and the 46 falls under a 6W. But then let's say I have a little tiny waist, and my waist is only 36. Under 6W, the pattern is 40. Don't go down to the size 5 to cut the waist. Stay in the 6W. If my waist is larger and my waist goes over to a 7W, then as you're cutting down the pattern of 6, go out to the 7W through the waistline area. It doesn't matter where, because you're going to drape it on you once you get it. It doesn't matter if it's smooth or whatever, but if you're a 6 at the bust, cut that size. I don't care what size. I don't care if you end up being an 8 at the waist or an 8 at the hips. Cut for the size bust you are and stay with that. Okay? Okay. So I want to have questions that you have about picking out the right size, because I want to cover all those questions now that you would have about picking out the right size. I want to make sure you understand that. If you get into a size that is too small, for whatever reason, you measured wrong, whatever, don't try to alter something that's just really, really small. It's too small. And even if women come to my workshop, and it's really small, I don't mind draping it, but it's a lot more work for them to be changing all those seams And remember I said on another pattern we should be tweaking, not overhauling. If we're overhauling, then it's really too much. It really is a time saver than to say, oops, this is too small, let's make another size. Okay? Any size questions? We're okay? Okay. Let's answer those other questions. Let's answer those other questions. Because I think if the questions are lingering, you'll focus on your question. I want you to listen. Okay, I don't have the sweater set. Would another top work to change the sleeve for Dana's top? Yes, if you don't have 195, you could use anything that has a set-in sleeve. There's a myriad of them. You know, any of the knit bodies, 210, 241, 231, 221, 112, yes. Any of those things have a set-in sleeve with a sleeve. If you don't have 195, I didn't mean to say just 195. That's my base, so that's why I said it. In your pattern, should I try to shorten on both shorten lines? In your pattern, should I try to shorten on both shorten lines on the bodice? No. Don't shorten anything. Are you talking about? I'm not sure what she's talking about. Yeah, don't shorten. Nobody needs to shorten silhouette patterns. I know you think you do, but I promise you really don't. I'll explain why once we start the draping. Okay. Have you ever sewed a vintage pattern, i.e. before the 60s? Of course. Yeah, why would you think I haven't sewed a vintage pattern? I've been sewing for a long time. I've sewn all kinds of stuff, yes. But maybe am I being stupid on something? Is that why you're asking that? No jacket to measure from. I now have a blouse sloper that fits. How do I determine the size from this? Your blouse is actually larger than your jacket. Your jacket has the least ease of any garment you wear. Jackets are generally heavier fabrics, they're outer fabrics, and so they have less ease in them. Blouses have more ease than jackets. So you could make the same size as your blouse and then take it in from there. That would be a beginning point. And that's actually probably the best answer. Go ahead and take your blouse and measure that number, and then you can always take it in and make it closer to the body. Okay? If size 6 at bust and 8 at hips, cut size 6 and go to 8 at the waist, yes. Yes. Or it doesn't really matter where you change, but if you know you're bigger at the waist, then yes, change as you go to the waist. And keep in mind you can always drape it back in. Okay, are we okay with that? Okay. This is like having a class of all these people and everybody's got questions, which is okay. Regarding size, I can't decide between a C or D cup. How do you decide? Your patterns, which I love, don't seem to correspond exactly to bra size. That's because they're blouse cup sizing, and blouse cup sizing isn't the same as bra cup sizing. But use the same as your bra cup, and if you're in between a C and a D, go to a D. Always go to a D. Now we'll talk about this when we're draping and how to figure out whether a C or a D will work better. But if you're in between and you're not sure, go to a D. All right? All right? I was trying to raise the bust level and the waist level by shortening on the short and length line since my bust is high and I am short-waisted. You guys, you're not. If you will do me a favor, just this once, don't shorten this pattern. You are not high-busted and you are not short-waisted, because there are pattern-making tricks that I can do, which I have done, where no one needs to change the bust and no one needs to change the waist. I promise. Just like I said, trust me on it just this once. Don't change anything before you make the pattern. Just make it up. You can change circumference from top to bottom. I'm okay. But don't do anything else, you guys, because I'm trying to show you that many of the things you think are right are not. And if you keep making the same changes you've always done, then you're not going to see that. You're going to keep having the same wrong end results. I mean, you can do it. I'm just trying to get you to not. Are all your patterns sized the same? If I use a certain size for a jacket, do I need that size for all your jackets? What about other garments? Yes and no. We have the same fit models. I have two fit models. I have one that's a regular size and one that's a W size. We drape the garment on that same fit model. However, if I'm the designer and I drape a blouse and I want more ease in that blouse, then because we give you finished garment measurements, those finished garment numbers are not always going to be the same. They're going to be different by according to what style. Do we think they should fit on the same body? Yes, we do. But you may come along and you may see that style and say, oh, well, I want this much ease. So there's going to be your interpretation, which that's because it's your garment, that will change, and you'll change. So in different sizes and different fabrics, I wear different sizes. I do. I wear different sizes just because it's this fabric and this fabric doesn't have as much stretch, so I'm opting to go up a size or two. So you have to think. That's what I said. You have to control your variables. You have to look at your pattern. You have to look at what you want. You have to look at your style, and you have to make a choice. It's not as easy as saying, oh, I'm always going to make this size every time I pick up a piece of fabric, and that's it. I'm never going to think again. You can't do that. All right? Sorry. What about doing full bust adjustments and lowering to match the center of your breast? Stop. Stop. Stop the madness, okay? No full bust adjustments, no lowering, no. Stop. All right? I'll show you why. Does a larger size change the shoulder width? No. I mean, maybe a 1/4 inch, but we're not McCall's. Hope somebody's not listening from McCall's. We don't grade out in the shoulder like that. You know, I tried on a lady yesterday. We tried several ladies who used size 8. Shoulders were perfect. You know, we just rarely change a shoulder. Every once in a while we do, but don't automatically change anything. I'm exhausted from saying that, okay? Just don't. Okay. Are we okay? We're going to make up the muslin. A muslin is simply not literally a muslin. It's just something that's tightly woven. This is a linen. So it doesn't matter what you use. Use something you don't like anymore. That could be a muslin. A muslin is just simply something rigid. Now what I found, I think a good point that was brought up yesterday was somebody made a pair of pants, and I was draping these pants, and they made it out of a rayon. So the pants look beautiful, but in fact rayon doesn't show the problems that a more rigid fabric will show, a cotton or a linen or something that doesn't have really great drape. So I've heard this expression that says, boy, if the muslin looks good, then you really know your fabric will look good because your fabric will have more drape than the muslin. So I would use something that doesn't have good drape for a muslin. You want those problems to show. You don't want something that drapes beautifully and well. All right, makes sense? So don't use something that drapes beautifully because you want to see the problems. But I did go ahead, and here's the 4 pieces of 1950 sewn together. Front, side, back, side, back. I picked my cup size accordingly, and then I made up a sleeve. So there's my 6 pieces. All I did was sew up together. I sewed the shawl collar along the shoulder seam and the neckline, and you could drape it on yourself. I'm draping it on my sweetie, my friend here, because we're twins. She's taller than I am, I think, but I don't have my heels on. But anyway, I can change her height just like that. All right, so I've sewn up these 4 pieces, and we're going to start draping. The one thing that I wanted to show you is when you are, like with the sleeve, when you're sewing it together, if there's a rigid or a weird funky things like there are at these sleeves at the top, start at the bottom. Start at the bottom because that's a straight edge, and just put them together and sew them up to the top. They work out just fine. What this is the seam allowance. If I open the seam allowance, you can see that right where those, you're not going to be able to see this, but anyway, right where they come together, if you look like that, is where the 3/8 inch, remember this has a seam allowance, so it starts to, anyway, when you put it together like that flat, right where the pieces start, see they'll form a perfect even edge, but they'll have a little bit hung over because of the 3/8 inch seam allowances. So just start at the bottom, that's the easiest way, and sew up to the top, and where they end, okay? Alright, so I have my jacket on the mannequin, and the first thing I'm going to do is don't ever drape a jacket without shoulder pads. So I'm going to make sure I put my shoulder pads in my little person, in my little jacket, because shoulder pads change many things. And in this, I want to talk just briefly about shoulder pads. because many of you don't think you like shoulder pads, and I'm going to suggest to you that you like shoulder pads, you just don't understand them. So shoulder pads for me vary by by how heavy the jacket is. If it's a thicker fabric, I use a 1-inch shoulder pad. If it's a lighter weight fabric, then I'll use a thinner shoulder pad, just to really give me a more natural look. But if it's a thicker fabric and a thicker shoulder pad is used, the weight of that fabric kind of pulls down that shoulder pad anyway, so I get a really nice natural look. Keep in mind that the main thing that women don't like about shoulder pads is that they're spaced too far. It's not that they're high. When they're high, they actually make us look thinner and taller, younger, all of those things. But if they are spread too far, then they give us that football look, and that's not what we want. So just move them in to the edge. They will go to the edge of the fabric at the sleeve, and they're really a great look. All right, but use whatever you want. The pattern's made for a 1-inch, so if you're not using a 1-inch shoulder pad, you're going to take up the shoulder and you're just going to re-angle it to this point, and you can just take all that away. And then, of course, you can lower the armhole and just keep the same size armhole. Okay, so here we are. I'm closing up the front, and I'm literally going to put a pin. Remember, all this does, it meets at center front. So I'm in the right size because I simply can see that that meets at center front, and then it starts to mildly separate. Okay? Alright, so I'm going to go in order of L, C, and D. And you know, everybody knows that's length, circumference, depth. If you've got those PBS things, I know you're watching. And I've gotten a lot of really kind feedback about that PBS, and I want to say thank you. We really worked hard, and we really are very proud of it. So it's the next step when it's appreciated. So thank you all very much for your kind comments. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is L. And L is lengths. There's 3 body lengths, so I want to look at the base of the neck to the bust. Now, because it's a princess seam, and that princess seam is not going over the bust, I have 6 inches of error factor. There's no way I've missed your bust by 6 inches. Not a prayer. So do not change anything about the bust point. It's not wrong. Can't be wrong. There's an error factor in there that's 6 inches, and I'm not 6 inches off. So there can be wrinkles around the bust, but we'll cover that later. Right now, just as far as where the bust hits, not one of you should need to change that unless you're under 4 feet or over 6 feet. All right? Everybody in between that I got. All right, then the next length we're going to go to is the waist. And so I'm going to turn this around just so you can see the waist. And in this particular case, I'm going to do just a real slight sway back adjustment because, in fact, I have a little bit of a sway back. So I'm just going to do it right here, and actually I'm going to do it above the waist so that it actually will sit at the waist just like I want it to. And if you notice, the widest part is at the center back, and I did that because of the wrinkles. You saw the wrinkles that were there, and you notice just with a couple pins those wrinkles, whoops, that wasn't really a pin. With a couple pins those wrinkles actually go away. But you notice that the wrinkles just literally stop at the side seam. So my last pin is just going to be at the side seam because it absolutely stops. And there's no wrinkles in the front that I have to worry about. So it's literally just, and that's how I know it's a sway back, because it's a dart. And I probably shouldn't have fixed it on the length issue, but some people confuse sway back with it, the length is too long, and it's really not a length issue, it's a depth issue because it's a dart. But sometimes when we look at it, we confuse it with a length issue. So there we have it. I've taken that out. It looks absolutely beautiful. And again, because this is a linen, I'm going to get a lot of wrinkles, and the wrinkles are going to, but that's good. I want that because you can see how beautiful that is now, and it's not a big change. In fact, it's just like a little tiny 1/4 of an inch, but it's enough that it makes a big difference as to how it looks. Okay, so those are the only 2 lengths you have to deal with. One is to the bust, and again, lengths only go up or down, so all I can do is move the bust up or down, and all I can do is move the waist up or down. All right, so circumference I'm already okay with. I already picked out my circumference. The only thing you might need to do there, again, don't change anything up here, is either let the waist out and let the hips out, or if you've opted to go to a larger size, you could just bring them in. And when you're doing that, you want to make sure that you're going in on all these seams. Don't just use the sides, use all of them equally. There's no literally any kind of division of side, so don't go to one seam, and don't go to the front, and don't go to the back. Use all of those seams equally to bring it in or let it out, either way, whichever you want to do. Okay, are we okay, or should we have questions? The jacket muslin looks pretty tight. With a heavier fabric, will this be even tighter? The jacket muslin's not tight. It might just look that way because it's linen on top of cotton. There's cotton underneath it. But so it's not tight. However, when I do take it to heavier fabric, which I have cut out and I'm going to show you in a little bit, what I did, because it's a heavier fabric, I added some seam. I added a 1/4 inch on. I'll show you. Yes, so I did make a change on that because of the fabric, not because it was tight. Okay. All right. Anything else? Okay, so now I think the most important part is depth. And depth allows me to clean up all of these little wrinkles. So I'm going to look at all the little wrinkles that I have, and in here I'm going to pick up that shoulder seam just a little bit. And what that means is that even with the 1-inch seam allowance, my shoulder is a little more sloped than this mannequin. Than the pattern was meant to be. And whenever we're draping, what we have to recognize is that we're right, the pattern's wrong. So we're going to change the pattern to equal us. You wouldn't add bigger than a 1-inch shoulder pad. That's just silly. All right, then if you notice there's some, and what you're looking for is angular wrinkles. Angular wrinkles are depth, diagonal, depth, darts. You can DDD. If they're diagonal wrinkles, they're depth issues, and darts are going to take care of them. In this particular case, I'm actually a C cup, and what I did is I made a B cup muslin so that we would see problems in here. And you can see those angular wrinkles there. So this is a very common alteration when it comes to princess seams, and it's a dart, and it tapers to nothing but right here. Now this is not, this dart and the swayback dart, these darts are not going to be in the finished garment. These are simply, the reason I make a muslin is so that I can take out these darts and fix them so that my finished garment just looks beautiful. Now if you notice right here, that dart won't quit. If it's going to go to nothing, it will automatically go to nothing. You don't have to force it, and you shouldn't force it. But if you notice, it's just not stopping. So I'm actually going to continue it and use the center front as my pivot point and taper it to nothing at the center front. So I'm going to just keep going, and you'll see now it starts to clean up a few wrinkles that were there. And again, because I have a pivot point at center front, I just keep going until it goes to nothing. The most important part is identifying what the wrinkles are, either length, circumference, or depth, and then changing them. And you don't need somebody else. You guys can do this yourself. You know what the wrinkles are. I think for a lot of times you're just not sure how to fix them. This right here, there's a little bit of wrinkling here, so I'm just going to clean this up and take this away. And I've got this perfect seam here to do it, so I'm just actually going to keep it in the seam. All right, there we go. So that cleans it up both length and width. I'm going to turn this just a little bit so that you can see what I'm doing toward the back. When this side seam has been done here, I have to continue it. And if again you notice that wrinkle, it actually goes to nothing right here. It's not going to have to go to center back. So that's when I say, when you've heard the expression often, read the wrinkles. This is really what you want to do. You want to read these wrinkles because they'll tell you what to do if you understand those three options of length, circumference, and depth. You know, we all have those pins in our pin cushion that we should throw away and we haven't. I think I've pulled out a couple of those tonight. I'll make sure I don't have them tomorrow. Alright, so that tapers to nothing, and you can just see those little changes, how much cleaner they make the side of that garment. Alright? Alright, now that's all I see, and those are probably all you'll have to do. This one at the side, like I said, is very common. Sway back is very common. Right in through here is very common, and the angle of the shoulder. Those are probably going to be all the depth issues that you experience. I don't know of anything else I've seen, except sometimes if you have a rounded back, you'll have to actually cut right through here and open up and add a piece in, and your pivot points are right here at the edge, and you'll add length right at the center back. But don't do that automatically because, again, I've got a lot of depth built into that back, so don't automatically adjust it. So this is all that the draping should take. This is just not a lot of work. One of the reasons I picked this pattern is it just fits beautifully. Again, because of the range in the bust, the range in the waist. There's a pattern making term, and it's when you allow that waist, you keep the waist the same for about 5 inches, and so it fits a whole myriad of waist. Now when you're doing it on yourself, you can actually pinch it in and you can make the waist more shaped, but you don't have to pre-do it. You don't have to pre-lengthen it or pre-shorten it or anything like that on the actual tissue. No, not necessary. Okay. Okay, yes. Now the question is, do you take the muslin apart to use the pieces you've adjusted as your pattern piece on your fabric? Yes, so the next step is I'm going to take this and I'm going to stitch all these changes. I've got 1 change, 2 change, 3 changes. I got 4 changes. So I'm going to take and stitch those changes. Then I'm going to put it back on, just to make sure that when I was taking out the pins, I didn't over sew something or, you know, make it more difficult than what it was. Then I use this, and then this is all just basted together. I'm just going to take it apart. The only thing I want to say about the sleeve is you're going to put your sleeve on, and this is my sleeve, and the only thing I have to do with my sleeve, it's the right circumference, it's all of that, but I have to take a little dart right in the front. And what that dart does is it actually changes the angle of the sleeve to where it bends it more than what it is. So your dart is in the front, it tapers to nothing at the back of the elbow, and it tapers to nothing at the side. So you have an undersleeve and an upper sleeve, and both the upper and under sleeve are shorter in the front, tapering to nothing in the back. Alright, you don't need to sew the sleeve in. There's really no need to do that. You know, I mean, the pattern fits, so the only reason to sew it in would be either to find out if you have enough mobility or to see if it fits, and it definitely fits. Okay, so draping is really easy. Now again, the whole reason I chose this pattern, see, there was lots of reasons, but another reason is because this front is the same as the front facing. So once you change this front becomes the front facing. You don't have other pieces to change. You just cut 2 of these for the front and 2 of these for the front facing. If you want to, you could go through and change the other side, but minimize your amount of work. Like I've had many ladies go through and make new muslins. You can if you want, if you have a lot of changes, but you're only going to have 4 changes isn't a lot to have. So I would recommend you not making a new muslin, but you got to do what you're comfortable to do and based on how much time you have. Instead of adding bust starting as you did while draping the jacket, could you just redo the muslin using a larger cup size? You can, yes, and I purposely chose the B to show you what it would look like could I have made a C. But this is such an easy change. I don't think I would redo the muslin because it's more time. The goal is to get through your pattern work as quickly as possible to get the jacket made. I hate that you all spend, you know, years on the pattern work. So I could just go ahead and make this change and then just say, you know, next time I'm going to make the C cup. It's going to work better for me. But for right now, you could just go ahead and make that change. That would be my suggestion. Whether you want to make up a new one or not is your call. Okay? All right. Can you show us how to take a dart in the sleeve? Yes. The dart in the sleeve, you have the front of the sleeve. The lower seam is the front, the higher seam is the back, and the dart literally comes at the front seam. So at the front seam, I'm going to take a little dart, like usually a 1/4 inch is adequate there, and it's on both pieces on that front seam. Alright, and then it tapers to nothing to that seam, and it tapers to nothing to that seam. And that's it. And you can see what it does is it increases the bend of the elbow, and it makes sure that your arm and the sleeve arm bends the same amount. Alright? Okay. So once you've sewn the changes and tried the garment back on, what next before cutting out the main fabric? Nothing. Just take it apart. I've got my seam allowances. If you've made bigger seam allowances, reduce all your seam allowances down to 3/8. But other than that, take it apart, cut it out, make your jacket, which is what I did. Okay, I draped my muslin. I'm going to move my little lady back. I've draped my muslin. Now, because I chose a fabric, I'm going to talk about fabrics here a little bit. This is a shawl collar. And this has been so much fun. I'm telling you, I have more fun doing these for you guys. I really appreciate that you watch, so I have somebody to talk to about this. So I did some shopping. I mean, I always do shopping, but I ran across some shopping this time that Giorgio Armani, I've told you for so long, if you're going to do a shawl collar, don't do it in stripes. Don't do it in geometrics. Geometrics, the pattern, has to match, yada yada. Well, as soon as you say stuff like that, somebody's going to come along and change it up. And sure enough, the person who comes along is Giorgio Armani. So he has a fall jacket out that is a shawl collar done in stripes. And what he did, it's just absolutely stunning. He put all the stripes on the bias, the whole entire front. Now, not the sleeve and not the back of the jacket. Those are straight, and the stripes are straight. But he put the whole entire front. So what it does is it has these stripes. They almost look like rolling hills. I mean, it was just really, really stunning. So now you can do stripes and shawl collars. Now, I think the goal is, I was thinking about this, we have rules and then we have reasons why the rules are, and I've seen so many shawl collar jackets that you all have made and you've done them in stripes. They look horrible because the stripes are going off the fabric. But by putting them on the bias, the stripes never go off the fabric. They just continue. Actually, the lapel continues onto the jacket. It's really, really beautiful. So if you're going to break rules, be very aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it, etc., etc. All right, so I picked a fabric. It's on our site, and I'll tell you, it's called navy black or dark navy black patches. Something like that. Navy black patches? Okay. Anyway, this fabric is stunning. It was stunning when I bought it. It's still stunning. I bought it because I just literally couldn't let go of it. It is an American designer, but it's from Italy because the American designer created the fabric and imported the fabric. And I'm not allowed to say who the designer is because we're only the second hand. And if you just can't, I can't do it. I told them I wouldn't do it, and I can't do it. But you would know them, and you would want to buy it. Okay. So this is a wool silk. It's got a texture to it, and the texture is created by thicker wool yarns and really thin, light silk yarns. It's really beautiful. It's a dark blue thick yarn and a thin silk yarn. The black is the silk yarn. So it is somewhat geometric. It's a weird, not totally geometric, but somewhat geometric. So I decided this was the fabric I was going to use, and I was going to turn it on the bias and create the whole front, the side in a bias, and the back and the sleeves at the straight of grain. So in playing with this fabric, what I did is you can see that these big fat yarns are the wool, and you can pull them out, and it leaves all these little silk fringe. So the very first thing I did is I used the let me get all my parts here. 1950 has beautiful fringe or opportunity for fringe anywhere along the front. This is a 1950 that I did years ago, and I had a little sheer that matched the jacket fabric itself. I made the skirt out of the sheer, and I gathered a little thin bit of the sheer for the ruffle. And then of course you need a tie. So whenever I'm doing 1950, I'm always thinking, okay, what can I use for the piping and what can I use for the tie? In this particular case, this is a raw silk, and I use the zipper. And so there's two zippers. One stops here and goes up to the back, and one's just fake for trim and used down here. So the zipper is fully functional as far as zipping and unzipping, and you just zip it a little way, or you could zip it as far as you want. I've loved this jacket. I've worn this jacket to death. The zipper is a great trim. Alright, then also this is a great way where you don't have to put a trim inside the seam. You can simply lay it on top, and it creates a beautiful focal point. That's really why I love one of the reasons I love this jacket. The history of it came from Max Mara. Max Mara is an Italian family, a design family. They've been in design business for about 80 years, and it's just a beautiful classic jacket. It can be made up many, many times. Okay, so here is the jacket now that I've done out of this navy fabric. And of course, this is all you're going to do. You're not going to do the whole thing, but I've done, the front is on a bias, and you may not be able to see all of this, unfortunately, but it's absolutely stunning. And yesterday I had brought a lot of things I had on the webcast to the Irvine one day, and the comment was the same. They're so much more beautiful in person than they are, you know, on the webcast. And you know, we're limited by your uploads and download speeds, but I don't know if you can see, but the print is actually done on the bias. So, and you can see that side panel, that bias just continues from the front to the side, so that when now this rolls back, and of course this will be the facing, the bias just rolls and continues on upwards. So if it were a stripe, whatever it was, as it comes around to the front and rolls over it, it goes out into the shoulders. It's just really, you know, I don't know why. As soon as I saw that jacket, I thought, now why didn't I think of that? But anyway, I didn't. So then the back is straight a grain. I did not do anything other than straight a grain, and the sleeves are straight a grain. So then as I cut the pieces out, all I did was assemble the front, the side, the back, just straight lines. All I did, and then I did the shoulder seams and the shawl collar, and then of course I did the sleeves. I used the selvage is going to be my trim, and so I cut that out and I serged along the raw edge, and then I pulled out these yarns because you need the trim that you're going to do around the collar, and then I pulled out these yarns, and I'm going to use these for the ties. So what I did is I braided them. So I came up with these two ties that I braided. This is really fun to do this, and they're very strong because there's actually 3 strands of this stuff, and one strand is strong, but then I braided 3 of them and came up with my ties. And then the other thing I did was I created this, the next piece. And again, everything I've done is just straight seams done together. So now this is the front facing, and I also did this on the bias, and then the lining. So you're cutting out your 4 body pieces and your 2 sleeves, and then your same thing with your lining, your 4 body pieces and your 2 sleeves. But on your lining, the front is a front facing and the rest of it is lining. And then I just sat and sewed them all together, and it maybe is an hour. It's just not a lot of time at all. You're not putting anything together. That's not until next webcast. You're just getting the body. You're going to do your muslin, you're going to drape it, you're going to cut out your pieces, and you're going to assemble all those straight lines. Easy enough? We're going to braid our ties, we're going to do whatever else. This blue fabric, this navy fabric, we had it for $50, and for the next little week or so, I'm going to, I don't know, maybe however long it lasts, I put it at $39.99. I took $10 a yard off of it. It's really a stunning fabric. Now because I'm using a heavier fabric, when I cut out that fabric, just through the body until I got above the bust, I added a 1/4 inch on all of those seams. So until I got above the bust. Once I get under the shoulders and all of that, I went right back to the regular pattern. Don't get it to where it's just too big. So I only did it through the body, the hips, the waist, the bust, and then once I got about a high bust, then I went right back. I don't want the shoulders to be wider. I don't want any of that. And again, that's why I used the 1-inch shoulder pad, because I had a thicker jacket and I knew the jacket would kind of push down the weight of the shoulder pad. And a half-inch shoulder pad generally just isn't enough when you have a heavier fabric. I wanted to show you some other fabrics that we have that I purposely bought for this jacket. And these are all the first 4 fabrics online. They're beautiful, and they're so much like Armani jackets that's what I'm sure why I bought them. They're lightweight. They don't need any fusible. They don't need any interfacing at all. They're just stunning. They really are beautiful. This is the gold, silver, copper, I think is what this one is. This one here, and I wish again you could see it on real. It's a damask. It's a floral damask, and it's a blue and a black. And it's the blue color that's so popular right now. It ties in gorgeous with black. It's just really stunning. And then this one, prior to seeing Giorgio Armani in that stripe in the lapel, I would have said no. It's a brown wine with a little, and black with a little light stripe through it. I would have said no, but I would absolutely do this. And I would put it on the bias on the front pieces, and it would make a stunning jacket. It really would be beautiful. So any of those fabrics, but it's a great time to use your stash too. So if you have it, dig it up. How much extra fabric is needed for putting on the bias? You know what? I didn't need any extra. The pattern itself calls for 2 yards, or for 1.5, and I had 2 yards. So because we don't sell half yards anyway, I had 2 yards, and the 2 yards was sufficient. This jacket is unlined. No, this jacket is lined. This is a lined jacket. If you don't line the jacket, how do you hide the shoulder pads? You can take the shoulder pads and put them on top of the fabric. Now again, I'm lining the jacket. We're lining the jacket, you guys. You're going to line this jacket. Next month we're going to talk about unlined jackets, but let's line this one, because what I'm going to show you how to do this next time. Next time what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the trim on, but I'm going to set in the sleeves. We're going to sew. I'm going to set in the sleeves, and I'm going to line the jacket. I'm going to show you how to finish everything. One thing I wanted to point out though, when you do the jacket, and the muslin too, this very front seam light here where the side panel is sewn to the front, that does not match. Do you see that? There should be about 3/4 of an inch separate there. Many of you, when you come into workshops, you have those front 2 pieces matching. 3/4 of an inch is the difference, because the front only has a seam allowance and the side has a hem. So the side is longer by 3/4 of an inch than that middle, so don't make them the same. If you are not going to line it, you can take a shoulder pad and you can put it on a piece of fabric, and you just trace the fabric to follow the shape of the shoulder pad, and then just stitch it to the bottom of the shoulder pad so that when you look up at the jacket, the bottom's covered. You don't need to cover the whole thing, but I just serge it around to the bottom of the shoulder pad, and then when it looks completely covered, but it doesn't need to be. And it also gives the shoulder pad kind of some mobility inside. Okay, so we've got ties. I've got my ribbon that's going to go down the front. I've got sleeves. Get all your stuff together. Look around for what you need. Your shoulder pads, your tie interfacing, your needles, whatever you need, get it in one setting and start. It's so much fun. I can't wait. Like I said, I had to stop for you guys not to finish this jacket so that we could do it next time. But that's your goal. You're going to make your muslin, you're going to drape it, and then you're going to cut out the base and just put it together. All right, can we do that? Say this. I know I'm not supposed to say this, and I always do. Our bonus question will be asked in the chat soon, then I'll ask it on camera. The winner will find a coupon a coupon code worth $50 in their chat box. That's a pretty good deal. Would a plaid fabric work? That's a design question, and my opinion would be no, but you can't trust my opinion. Before I saw Armani do a stripe, I would have said no. And now, you know what? I always learn from you guys. Would I do it in a plaid? No, I think it's the wrong marriage. But if you can Do whatever you want. Sorry, I wasn't very politically correct on that one. Do you use a sleeve head? Yes, the tie interfacing is the sleeve head. We're going to do that next time. Don't worry about putting the sleeves in yet. Just make them up. See, I just made them up. I've just got them ready to go. They're pressed. 2 sleeves ready to go. I haven't done any of that. I'm going to do that next time and show you how to put them in, show you how to use the shoulder pads, finish off the front of the jacket, and then show you how to line it. So you guys, it's really not hard, and it didn't take a lot of time at all. So you got 2 weeks. Chop chop, get it done. All right. Bonus question is, what decade did wear that's okay. What decade did women start wearing jackets? We mentioned it earlier in the webcast. What decade did women start wearing jackets? Did we get it? Come on, come on. All right, you girls actually listen, huh? Sometimes I wonder, but I'm telling you, y'all are really getting smart. Yesterday, I got to tell you, Vicky from San Diego drove up, and I forgot to ask how Nina and how Cindy are. But anyway, say hi to them. But Vicky said, and I love this, she said, frustration begins where knowledge ends. Frustration begins where knowledge ends. That is so true. So when you get frustrated in your sewing, I am more than happy. Shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer it. But if you just keep going, you're more likely to make those mistakes. Frustration begins where knowledge ends. So sometimes recognize that you just don't know the answer right now, but if you ask, you'll find out the answer. All right, and I'm happy to help. So we're going to have a great webcast in 2 weeks. Join the Pattern of the Month Club. We'll get all those patterns out to you ASAP. It's great savings. And you're allowed 4 changes per year. So if you already have a pattern that we announced to be Pattern of the Month, we'll let you swap it out. All right, ladies, we have an answer? We have a winner? All right, Gypsy Sue, whoever you are, she knew that it was the 70s. All right. Can you imagine? That just seems like such a short time ago, and now I have so many jackets. I love jackets. What changed? Everything. The fabric, the construction, everything. They're wonderful. All right, so we all need jackets in our wardrobe. Why are we need to sew jackets? Because they're so expensive and they're made so poorly that we can make them so much better. All right, so you guys, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. It's fun to be back. We'll see you in 2 weeks. All right, bye.